You know, back when I was 19 years old, I was given the best piece of advice that I've ever received. I was told, Daryl, when you stop fighting, the fighting stops. Let's talk about that. Thank you for joining When I Stop Fighting, the podcast. My name is Daryl Dittmer. Today I'm joined by Jon Emery. After losing a 20-year job and going through a painful divorce, Jon embarked on a journey of self-discovery that led him to deeper authenticity, stronger connections with his children, and a passion for helping others share their stories. Through his podcast, Life's Checkmark, he creates a space for those feeling lost or alone while guiding people who have hesitated to start their podcast, helping them overcome doubts and bring their voices to the world. Jon, thanks for joining me. Great to see you again.
Yeah, same here, Daryl. Thank you for having me.
Thanks. Yeah, we had a chance to chat not long ago on Life's Checkmark, your podcast, which was very cool. I enjoyed that discussion very much, and we've explored your podcast group and service, which I think is very, very cool. And I'm struck by, as I've ruminated on our discussion and just thought about it a little. I think it's, stories are fascinating. Stories are what we have to give. Stories are how we help others relate and how others relate to us. And I think it's so important to share our stories and certainly our pain and things that have caused us angst and troubles and all of those sorts of things. But also the things that inspire us and things that help us be better and things that maybe we looked at as the difficulties, but they changed our life for, in a direction that can help others. And I applaud you for sharing your story that and wanting to help others and doing it to help others. And I just think that's so commendable. So thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, I'm excited to share whatever value I can to you and your audience. So I'm ready to dive in.
Great. Yeah, thank you. And love to hear your story. Love to hear how you got to, I know it's a lot of stuff, but how you got to Life's Checkmark, your podcast.
Sure. So, as you mentioned, I had a job for about 20 years. And, I was pretty much taught, raised in a sense, not directly, hey, this is how you do life, right? But you have that feeling of getting married, having kids, get a house. If you go to college, great, get a job or whatever it is, right? So that's kind of the path everybody seems to take. And so I took that path. I didn't go to college. Well, I went to college for a semester and that was it. I found the full-time job to be like, hey, this is what I'm doing. I did venture into some real estate investments as I was at that job. And then when they said, hey, we're closing the doors, they probably gave us, I guess, 2 months, I think, maybe less, to say that this is what's happening. Everybody else could sense it. I was like, I'm more optimistic. Like, nah, there's no way, right? And so, anyways, they decided to close the doors. Production stopped in October of that year. I think it was 2020. And then I held around till May of the following year for the simple fact that I was in the logistics area with shipping and receiving. So I was one of the last 3 to walk out the door. Basically, we were making sure everything was gone. Like it went from a full production facility to a shell. All the equipment was gone. The forklifts were like the last thing to go, because we had to move stuff around, and it was crazy. It was upsetting to see them leave, and then when we had to walk out the door and there was no looking back, right? So it was kind of a weird place to be at when I started there when I was 19, and then just I guess it was 39 when I was let go, or yeah, somewhere around there. Anyways, so that was a life-changing experience for me because I was trying to figure out how to look at this as an opportunity or not, right? And for the longest time I wanted out. I just didn't know where or whatever that would be because I only knew one thing pretty much, everything I was doing at work. So I can only carry that to go somewhere else, not really have a new skill to go with me somewhere else. So I did look at it as an opportunity. It took a while. And then what I ventured into next was life insurance. I knew a guy that actually helped me get my policy, and he was taking on people, and he considered me one of the people that he would like to have on his team, even though I knew nothing about it at the moment. So before we shut the doors at the other place, I was working on my insurance, uh, yeah, license. I was working on my insurance license. So I got that probably a month or so after I was let go. And, I didn't make a sale with anybody till maybe 8-10 months after. It took time. I was starting to do YouTube videos. I was putting out stuff, where I was learning everything I knew about the policies I had to offer, and then share that with the world. Right. So that's why I started with the YouTube channel, and I had fun doing that. It was a learning curve for me. During the time it was still like COVID. So the kids I have 2 kids that they were at home, every once in a while because they were just how COVID was. And so I wasn't, it was a blessing kind of in disguise because I was home. At the time, their mother decided to get a part-time job, almost like a full-time job at the school. So she was doing that. And I around, oh, it was a little bit before, but around January within the same year, there was things going on at the house that I couldn't even think of or fathom. I was lost. I was trying to figure things out. Stuff was happening that makes sense to me. And you could, for me, it was like I didn't want to believe it, but your gut tells you something else, and you just don't want to believe your gut sometimes, right? But even though your gut is like better than your brain sometimes, it's saying, "Hey, this is what's up. You better get you something right here." Uh, so, anyways, it was basically February of that year. I was started to lose weight. I lost about 20 pounds. There was behaviors being changed at home. Not much was really said. There was not much communication going on. So I had a hard time understanding things. Ultimately, it led up to the word divorce come May, not from me, but from their mother. And, I held on to as long as I could because my father's side, they all got divorced. And I always told myself that I was not going to have that. That was not set in my brain. It was like to have the kids, all that, et cetera, right? And carry it out. Thankfully, before that word came up, I was prepared. But thankfully, I listened to a podcast in January of that year before it was mentioned. And it's called The Dad's Edge. I listened to it probably 2 or 3 years prior to that, basically to become a better father. It's all across the board about different things that men talk about, right? Finances, etc. So anyways, whatever they were talking about, I have no idea. I can't remember, but they have this networking program, whatever, for men. You could jump on all these Zoom calls throughout the whole month, all different times, and whatever the discussion is about. I didn't jump on any of them. I did sign up for this. I didn't jump on any of them, but I did connect with like 4 or 5 men that pretty much were like a lifeline in a sense, right? So if you think you're going crazy, you're calling up a guy and go, does this make sense? And they're talking to you. And these aren't like men that were like put on the table like, hey, you're supposed to talk to so and so. No, these were guys that were reaching out in like a Facebook message or whatever and had a connection. We started texting, we started making phone calls. Some of these men went through what I was going through. Some of them, haven't experienced it, whatever, right? So it was just a safe haven to express what was going on in our heads, because that's how we get lost. We get lost with things just keep on cycling around in our heads. So we have to get it out. And if you can't get it out to the people closest to you, then you have to reach out to probably the strangers that are going to listen even more to you. I never really considered too many people to be like my close friends, especially within the marriage with their mother. There's some people I would call friends, but to talk about the relationship, it was never a thing of mine. Like I never took anything anywhere else besides to their mother, and that was it, right? If there was ever an issue. So this was all new to me. Like to open up and like, hey, this is what's happening. Like I don't know what it is. How do I deal with this? So there's this one gentleman. He basically helps men, going through any kind of struggle, especially with marriage and stuff, right? To try to rebuild their marriage with their wife. And so I he does charge, right? So, but he never charged me up till the one thing I decided to take with him. And so when I Facebook messaged him, it might take him a day or so, but he was able to just get back to me and just tell me just a little blurb, right? Like breathe, just breathe
Mm.
because this is not the end of the world. It sucks, but just breathe, right? And that was like one of the things that helped me to keep moving forward. So even if somebody wasn't going to answer right away, at least you could just say something to somebody else. Anyways, he had a masculinity course starting end of April, beginning of May. It was like a 4-week program. And I was like, what? I don't know this masculinity, femininity stuff. It was all new to me. Like this is a whole new world, right? Just because things were shaky at home. So I took it. It was me, another guy, and him. And the other guy didn't have issues at home, from what I understood. I think he just wanted to become stronger or whatever. Anyways, the first 2 sessions, I was a mess. Like I'm not gonna lie, I was still trying to figure things out. We were months after things were starting to change at the house, and so like I almost like sensed like an ending coming, but I wasn't really looking forward to it.
Mm.
Um, I can remember some of the things we discussed was like communication with a woman, like how they communicate to us. We might not receive it the same way. So we would have to mirror what they're saying and say, hey, is this exactly what you mean to say? Because so I can understand and do what you're asking me to do in the right way. Right. And that's just a short, quick example. So it's kind of like stuff like that. And the second or the third and the fourth one, like I was fine. And he even said it, like he said it to me. He's like, you sound more confident, you sound more positive, uplifting, and I'm like, I guess I don't really remember everything that was said, but yeah, I felt like I was moving forward. And so when that all ended, we sat at the table eventually one day and she said she wants a divorce. And I said, okay. I wasn't fighting, I wasn't doing anything. I lasted as long as I could, just in case there was a change of mind in somebody else's head. It didn't happen. And then yeah, as soon as that conversation was over, there was a lot more relief in my body. Like I can
Mm.
finally let things go the rest for a while. Uh but that was new. Like it was nothing, again, nothing I ever considered in my life to happen, especially with having kids. Like I never wanted that to happen. I did not know Daryl until I was 19, 20. I moved out of the house. My sister is a year younger than me. She decided to go into the Navy. My mom came to my door and said she's leaving my dad. And she
Mm.
said that they have not been married for years. And so I didn't know this. They were divorced way back when I was a kid, and they just stayed together in the same house for whatever reason. And I don't know if
Wow.
I don't know if that helped me in any way. I really don't know, but I can only imagine what the struggle could have been just to make ends meet and work together as the mother and the father in the same house, if they got along or they didn't get along. I never really saw anything, to be honest with you. So that and I couldn't even help her move out. Like I was a mess then because I'm like, this just does not make sense.
Yeah.
Um, but I didn't want to be that person to try to live with somebody else for the sake of the kids, even though it's the best thing for the kids to have a well structured family. I really believe in that. And, that's what I'm trying to carry out now, even though I'm a single father. I'm trying to hopefully prepare my son as a man to go in the right direction. Right. And same with my daughter, have that man that's going to provide and watch over you. Yeah. I watch over her when she goes to the bathroom at restaurants, and I got my son starting to do it now too. Like it's just one of the things, right?
Yeah.
If the guy is not doing that, he's looking at his phone. Like what the hell kind of man is that? So that's how I'm kind of presenting myself. And so feel free to ask questions along the way here. But I mean, going through the divorce, and I mean, it wasn't even finalized yet, right? So it took like another year and everything was final, but we pretty much just wanted to wrap things up. It wasn't like drawn out in any way. I had to work on myself, right? So first of all, how's my life going to change? I worked on myself mentally and emotionally, right? Saying I got this. I don't know how, but I got this. And started listening to things to be more positive. Like I'll still do it today. I'll watch something on YouTube in the morning when I'm drinking my coffee. Some right now Les Brown has been popping up a lot, so I just been
Mm.
listening to him. Uh, I'll meditate for 10 minutes. That took some time. I'm still not perfect in any way, but it's time to escape away from the world and just let there be peace in your mind for at least a couple minutes. Write what I'm grateful for, three things, and then I've been praying and reading parts of the Bible. If not the Bible, I'll listen to an app on the phone, which has a Bible verse, Bible verse every day. That took some time for me too. So like I worked on some stuff, as a morning routine. And then I happen to have all this gym equipment in the basement that I haven't used for years. It was just like somebody was moving. I said, "Hey, look, if you can't get rid of it, let me know." At the time I had a cargo van. So I grabbed it all, threw it in the basement, and worked out every once in a while, and it just never took off. So now I had all this time on my hands. Like the kids weren't around me all the time. I'm working, and that's about it. Again, I wasn't podcasting or anything at the moment. So I started working out. I did like 5 days a week, maybe over an hour. Right, I have all the time in the world, so I'm taking my time. I read a book and was kind of following the program. I got results, but I didn't get what I was looking for. Um, I joined an entrepreneurs group. There happened to be a gentleman in there that does fitness training, and so I linked up with him, and he did it with me online, even though he's like an hour and a half away. That this is just how we started the conversation, started working together, and so helped me get my diet right, helped me get my program right because I was tired of doing 5 days a week. He's like, you don't need to be doing 5 days a week. Follow this and you'll get results. I was before my divorce, I was 180. I got down to like 160. And then he got me down to like 139 from what I remember. Yeah. And I'm like, dude, this is not where I want to be, right?
You're getting chiseled, right?
Yeah, this is not what I was looking for. And he's like,
Yeah.
I know. But I mean, like, think of the discipline you have to get to that, to see
Seriously.
something like, I'm not that way now because we built up muscle and stuff. We worked on things thereafter. But that took work, like to go from doing almost nothing to, maybe 3 to 5 days a week of like, hey, you got to do these exercises and, watch what you eat, track all your food, and to get you to that point. I mean, I don't want to exaggerate in any way, but I'm going to guess it took me about 2 months to get to that point. And then we just worked on things from there. So now we're friends. We talk to each other all the time. So it's been like 2 years just in the fitness journey. And then in the same year, I was working on myself spiritually. I started going to church. So short story was, again, I listened to a podcast, right? It's just how things work for me. I don't know which one it was. I don't know who was on the other end, but some guy said something about just say thank you. Thank you for being alive, right? Every time you wake up. Uh, it might be hard to do, but over time, just keep doing it. And so I did that. It took some time. Like it really took time to get that in my head. I still to this day I do, but now I add a few things afterwards. But one day I started saying thank you, God, and I'm like, what? Like what is this? This doesn't make sense to me. So I have a friend around the corner from me, and he goes to church all the time, and I'm like, what is this? He's like, well, maybe you're curious. Here's a Bible that he suggested. It's over on my desk there. It's for fathers, right? It's written in the
Mm.
words of fathers to teach their kids about the Bible and lessons learned from it. So I did. I had to order from eBay because they don't print anymore. So I have that, and then I started going to church. It's been almost a two-year journey with this as well. just to hear somebody else explain the scripture to me. Like I can't read, like I'm not that person to read all that and go, I get it. I don't get it all the time. So that's why I go. Like I want to hear it from somebody else's perspective. And they put it into this real life terms, into what everybody's dealing with at the moment. Um, so that's been a change. And so when I have I have the kids every 7 days. So when I have them, I take them to church with me too, when we go. And so again, there's no pressure there if they want to believe in any way, but at least it opens up the world a little bit to something new. And that's been a big shift for me as well. Um, I'm going down all the 5 areas I worked on.
I
So, and
love it.
then, yeah.
Yeah.
And then relationships, uh, not intimate, but just, just connecting with people like yourself. The podcasting has opened up my world tremendously all around the world, connecting with people. And this is how I feel like I've built relationships with people. We get to share things with each other and hopefully change somebody else's life for the better. And learning to communicate and have a discussion just like this to, you know, show up better, right? And maybe one day my kids might watch this or listen to it. I don't know. Sometimes I'll look at clips or whatever, right? They don't need to. I don't care, but they're more than welcome to. And so if something happens to me down the road and they can always go back and find something, and maybe they can actually find out and say, hey, this is what he really was doing when we weren't with him or whatever. um and then me trying to build a relationship with the kids, it's so tough when you're not around them all the time anymore. I'll be honest with you, because I'm fighting somebody else on the other side that's teaching them things that are probably totally different.
Right.
So if you don't see the eye to eye with the other person, their mother, then it's hard to make ends meet with the kids to understand. And so I always tell them, like, they have choices, right? So I am working to be an entrepreneur, even though I have a full-time job. I podcast and I have a community and stuff like that and courses. So I try to share that with them. Like, they don't have to go to school if they choose not to, but you can do all this other stuff, right? And find ways to earn money and make a living and be happy and help others. Um, so at the moment, my son's going to trade school in high school as well. So for plumbing and HVAC, whether he carries it out, I don't know. But now that most of the people in that industry are declining, right? They're not available. So it's a game changer if he does take this. If he there's no push, not for me. If he does take this, take an internship, learn about the business from that person who has the business. Take over the business later down the road if he chooses to do so, or start your own, right? So these are the things I'm learning, and hopefully I can pass it on to the kids, whether they take it or not. I'm not going to beat them up for not following my lead, but ultimately, I guess down the road they'll be like, "Oh, he was right, right? I should have done this." Uh, Not to say I'm always right, but it's one of the ways I'm trying to build a relationship with the kids, to keep their eyes open and focus on other things besides just the corporate world and going to work and making that company's vision, mission, and goals yours. Like, they don't always align.
So
Um,
true. Yeah.
yeah. And so the last one for me is the business finances. So that's where I'm at now. I kind of shared with you my journey of trying to get to where I am today. So I have like a base for everything I've been doing, even though I go back and I tried to refine it and make sure I'm still following that. And then now business is new for me. Like, as far as, reaching out to clients, getting people, helping them with podcasting, or even just, it took me a while just to get guests, just to start podcasting. When I did it start 2 years ago, it was a whole new learning curve. Um, and then, finances, like I know a lot of stuff with the finances, but now I'm in a different situation where I'm trying to, like, take care of things at the house, and, just me, right? I don't have another income coming in from somebody else. So it went from two to none, or two to one, I'm sorry. And it's a struggle. So um, that's, and that's all across the board. So, like, and when I say that, I mean, like, it's true. I believe that when most men go through divorces, they do wind up being broke, right? It's just the nature of the beast. And for me to try to hold a three-bedroom house for when they do come is tough with all of the stuff that breaks down and, everything else that's needed for a house. Um, Whereas where I live, I probably just get a one-bedroom apartment and I have no room for them whatsoever. So that's me. This is me. This is where I'm at. This is what I'm focusing on, and I'm just trying to make it happen. So feel free to ask me any questions with anything.
Yeah.
But that's where I'm at the moment.
No, that's a great story, John. And there's so many things. I wrote down a bunch of stuff while you were talking, but one of the things was early on when you were talking about just things that happen, and I did this, and then I did this, and then I did this, and I didn't know this when I started changing my life, but whether it's we can call it good or bad or difficult or easy or whatever it is, everything's a stepping stone, right? Everything is okay. Well, I had to step here so that I could step here, and then I could step here, and it just sort of takes what it takes to get us going on the journey, right? I mean, it's not what we always look at as, oh, this is the best thing or this is the worst thing, or but it just takes what it takes to get us going. And it sounds like you found that to be true, as you mentioned, looking at things as opportunities as opposed to, you know, just issues, right?
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that, yeah, I think that's a crucial component in our growth. You went through the gamut of things that I talk about too, which is, and maybe you don't put it in exactly this way, but first things first, I need to take care of what I need to take care of. And for me, it was body, mind, heart, soul. I need to take care of all of those things so that I can move myself into a position where I'm better at relationships. I'm better at the financial thing. All of those things for me have emanated from taking care of those very basic needs or things that I need to take care of, such as body, mind, heart, and soul. If I'm shirking one of those, and I heard all of those in your story, but if I'm shirking one of those, the other ones suffer.
Mhm.
And each one of those, if you split them up and you say, okay, those are 25% each, right, of my life. And if I'm shirking one of those, maybe I'm only operating at 75%, kind of like a car. If I'm only operating on a certain amount of cylinders, I'm not going to perform correctly. And so you hit that, and that was a big part of my journey. So I love that you talked about that, because then you talked about the relationships thing, and then you talked about the financial thing, and it's a sounds like you found that building you had to be number one, and it also, whilst taking care of the other things that you need to take care of in life, but building John was number one, and then the product that you're pushing out there in the world, which is you or me, is helpful for other people, is good for other people, and good for myself. So another thing you mentioned, there were a couple other things, but you talked about the basics, just like here's the basics that I'm doing, and that you look back and ensure that you're continuing to do those basics as you move on to other things, which I think is absolutely crucial. I've taught some salespeople and some business stuff in my time, and I always tell people, if you're struggling, just go back to the basics. Just go back to the blocking and tackling. And it sounds like you found that to be true. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yep. And you can refine it and just keep going back and forth with it. And so that's why, like I'm working on like a calendar structure and everything else like that with the whole business side of it now. Cause like my brain can go every direction. Right. So
Yeah.
what am I focusing on? Right. So that's why having a coach and all that stuff is beneficial. And for the example with the fitness trainer. Like, we were focusing, we were meeting once a week. Like, if I didn't show up meets and tell him like, yeah, I tracked everything last week and did all this, like I would feel like crap, right?
Mm.
What am I paying you for? And he's on the other end, wants to help, but you're not helping yourself. So yeah, it's all the basics, refining things, making sure you're doing the behaviors that you say you're going to do to to get you to your mission, your vision, and make sure they're all in alignment as well. So it's always about, if you're falling off the horse, right, you always look back, like you said, building blocks and the basics, and just start from the simple stuff. That's how we got here. Like that's how it's exactly how we got to where we are.
And telling the truth to ourselves, you just kind of touched on that. Like, hey, Daryl, you're going to do this, and this is your new discipline. This is something that you're going to implement into your life and and help level things up, right? You mentioned refining. I look at it like I have to continue to level up with myself. And what began for me, you talked about mentors a little bit, and I think you talked about it more in the friendship realm, but people that you can call, people that you can rely on, people that you can tell your story to, and they help you. And I found that to be absolutely indispensable in my life in terms of growth, because I can't let it all just sit up here and swirl. I can't do that, because I'm capable of doing that. And it hasn't been that way in a long time, but if I get stuck on something, it can get stuck. And you had mentioned finding that quietness and doing the 10 minutes of meditation. I think that's it. The world is geared to keep us just churning, churn and churn and churn, and keep those wheels turning and that mind moving. And that's, can be a good thing to a large extent, so we don't stagnate. But if we're playing the same reel over and over, we have to back down, I found, and find some quiet and find some stillness. And it sounds like you've found that for yourself, which I think is, and to me, that's one of the ways I take care of my soul. I find that quiet, and it also helps me take care of my mind, because I can slow down the noise. So I'm happy that you found that for yourself, and I found that for myself quite a while ago, but I've had to refine that over time. And I finally found a mentor that actually taught me meditation, which was just a really cool thing. He's one of my great friends today. We've been friends for a long time. I just had him on my podcast not too long ago, but those are the splinters, right? We start doing things, and then we're introduced to other opportunities. It sounds like you've found that to be true as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I did not know this or even thought of this too, but somebody told me just going for a walk is meditating too, because you're breaking the silence, right? You're getting out. Like I take my dog, it's like 30 minutes, right? I don't take my phone. It's something happens, it happens. And what am I going to do? Run home and try to jump in the car right away or whatever it is. Um, but you need that quiet time. Like most of the people don't know what it was like back when we didn't have phones, or when we did and we had to run home to call somebody because it was
Right.
all landline.
Payphones, right?
Yeah, that too. Right. And
Yeah.
so it's yeah, just to find that space, even if you just sit there in silence for a minute or two and don't listen to anything, I I, I believe it's well worth it. I'm told a lot of people say it doesn't take, you don't need much. You don't have to like disappear like in your head. I've had moments where you feel like you're gone, like you kind of like leave this world, and it's really interesting. But uh the idea is like the thoughts that come to you, you have to just let them pass. It's just okay, just another thought, so that you can clear your mind and free that space. And the other way too is also, when you a lot of people talk about just like taking a piece of paper and writing down everything you think about just to get it out of your head, right? Especially, people have problems trying to go to bed, and because they're thinking of all this stuff going on that they need to take care of or whatever. If you write it all down, I'm not saying it's going to prevent you from staying awake, and you actually fall asleep, but it could help. It can get you that point where you can rest. But yeah, breaking silence is very, very important.
For sure. And you bring up a great point, John, about if you do a minute at a time or 2 minutes at a time. I think, and something that happened to me was I got intimidated by and a little scared because I grew up in a fairly religious household. And so meditation was, what's that? Like, here's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to go to church. You're supposed to try to be a decent human being, and here's your stuff of what you're allowed to believe, and that's your religion. And that's what I was handed when I was a kid. And so anything that was outside of that was weird, and like, oh, is that something I'm allowed to do, as far as religion is concerned. And so I had to break down some of those barriers. I had to learn how to expand what I allowed, and what I looked at, and what I explored. And that was a great those were great moments for me when I let myself read things that weren't what the church taught when I was a kid, or I would look into Taoism or Buddhism, or whatever it was. And come to find out, at least what I discovered is it's all the same stuff. It's all the same stuff. It's about living properly and living in a way that supports me in here, but also supports everybody that I come into contact with. And you had mentioned, and you just talked about it again, getting things out, and that is such a crucial part of my life, in terms of I call it taking out the garbage. If I'm, either I'm stuck in that churning, and one of the big things that I did was I wrote, and I put everything on paper. And when things were just going crazy in my mind, I would just write and write and write. And it provided relief, and it provided a way for me to see what was actually happening. And sometimes I looked what was happening, I'm like, well, that's not that bad, like, not a big deal. The other thing I latched onto, which I thought was hugely important, is morning routine. And I have a morning routine that I like to do, and that's changed a little over the years. And for me, it takes a little time, but I what I always say is, if it takes a little time, just get up earlier. That's kind of what I do these days. Is if it's going to take a little longer, I just get up earlier. And I think that's an important component of allowing myself to have that time. It sounds like your morning routine has done wonders for how you start your day.
Yeah, if I miss it, I feel off, to be honest with you. Right.
Yeah.
Even if you come back to it like later in the day, it's still not the same. So I'll take my time. Like I'll get up around 4, and I'll just go with it. And when I get done, and I get ready for the day, so I'm not in no rush, because I working for that long at the other place and stuff like that. It was always just get up, hurry up out the door and come home. And, and it's just a headache after a while. And so now I got to that place where I just like, things will happen, things will come. Yeah, I have schedules and stuff like that, but my morning routine is like, this is my thing. This is what I'm doing. Only reach out to me if it's like an emergency, and I'll talk to you. You know, um, but it's I think it's a crucial point. And I believe everybody should start with at least one thing to start with in the morning, and then you can build it up from there. You don't have to go crazy and start with 5. We all want to change ourselves in the world right away, but if you do that, then you just give up. Just like, if I was to start exercising mad crazy, and, I'll stop in a day or, 3 days, and because it hurts, it sucks, it's new. What am I going to keep doing this for? But yeah, just keep pushing through. Just try one thing. I think a morning routine would be beneficial to whoever's listening that wants to change something.
I agree. And you mentioned gratitude, and I do, just briefly, I do breath work, I do meditation, and gratitude. And you had mentioned prayer, and I don't prayer for me, and you mentioned this as well, is just saying thanks. I
Mhm.
just say thanks for life, thanks for the people in my life, and I go through and just sort of think about the things that I am grateful for, and like you do, and it's just, to me, it's like oxygen. If I don't start my day that way, um, just like you, I feel a little off, or I feel a little noisy in my between my ears, or in my heart I feel restless. And if I start that way, generally my days are fairly smooth. And that doesn't mean things don't go wrong. That doesn't mean I don't, whatever, stuff happens, you get frustrated, blah blah blah, but it's easier to, it just smooths things out. It smooths out the ride, which I've found to be incredibly beneficial. I mentioned this to my friend the other day, who was on my podcast, but I said it's like oxygen. I almost can't. I feel like I don't want to function without it, and in many ways, I don't want to. I don't want to not function without it, because it's such a beautiful thing. Just to expand a little bit more on the thank you and the gratitude, I even if somebody who's listening wants to start their day just by saying, thank you for my life, thank you. And you don't have to thank anybody in particular. My idea of God has changed spectacularly over the course of the last few decades. It used to be this dude up there who was like, all right, I'm going to write all the bad stuff you do. And if you do all the bad stuff, I'm probably going to send you to hell if you don't do all this other stuff. And I'm like, oh man, that sucks. So I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to go there, and as things expanded for me in terms of my belief system, exactly, similarly to what you've talked about, is it doesn't have to be a you have to, like you teach your kids. It's about choices. It's about, you know, it, I've my definition of God has gone from something like this to something where I try not to define him or her or whatever that is, universe. I don't care what you call it, but it's been less definition over the course of time, which has felt pretty cool. Have you found that to be true for you, or is there anything in terms of that thread of the way that hits you, Jon, that you've uh, thought about, or?
Yeah, so for me, it's acceptance of that there's something or somebody higher, greater than you. That's what it came to be for me. Now I'm still learning like the scripture, all that stuff. Like I don't, I can't pick up on all of it, but I do have the belief that there's somebody watching over you. You're going through everything I just shared with you. Like it all happened for a reason. I wouldn't be here with you today for not going through that stuff. You know,
Right.
I believe I now believe that he saw things I did not see. Right. And so like me losing the job opened up my eyes in a way, in the wrong, in a kind of like what is this kind of way. But uh that's how things work. And we don't want to see that, but we have to accept that. So yeah, I look at it as somebody just being a higher self, and I that's my acceptance. So it took me from not accepting to accepting there's something there, right? Or somebody there. And I still believe like in the universe and all that stuff. Like, there's a reason I'm connecting with people too. And it's something's got to shift. And so real quick, going back on how I went through all my areas in life, like I did, if I didn't work on myself mentally and emotionally, I don't feel like I would have gotten through everything else. Like I really don't. And that's why I'm able to just where I'm at now, I'm able to could just walk through it. Whether it's stepping on glass with my bare feet or just rolling around in the mud, I'm gonna get through it, right? It
Yeah.
could there could be worse descriptions than that, but it's gonna happen. And if I didn't do everything first, I don't think I would be looking at this as a positive thing and knowing that I have to get through this struggle last to get to the other side. So, finding God and pushing through and believing all this stuff has helped me get to where I am today, so I can keep moving forward to help not just myself, but somebody else down the road with whatever they're experiencing.
For sure. And my whole sort of battle cry, which isn't a battle cry, but that's just what I decided to call it, is when we stop fighting, right? We stop fighting life, we stop fighting other people, we stop fighting ourselves. And it sounds like you've definitely embarked upon that journey where you're not fighting John like you used to. And I'm in the same camp. I do my best not to fight myself. And that's really characterized my journey because when I look back, and I fought drugs and alcohol and people and all sorts of stuff, but really what I was fighting was me. And when I started working on me and acceptance, you mentioned that acceptance is just so crucial. When I started being able to accept that life happens and the only thing that I really need to improve is me, things changed. And it sounds like things changed for you very similarly.
Yeah, exactly. You said it right to the T. You know, I have to accept things to happen for whatever reason it is, even though you might look at it as something that you don't want it to happen. It's the bad experience, it's the divorce, it's the going bankruptcy or anything else like that, right? Anything major and drastic. Um, if you look at it as an opportunity, a point of view of it's happening for me, not to me, then you can kind of open your eyes a little bit and just have that acceptance and know that things are going to get better. It might not happen right away because we're in that fast-paced world. We want things to change right away. Things don't change right away. For the good, they don't change right away for the bad either. So, uh, as you probably heard that, this too shall pass. Like, it goes both ways. So eventually we're all going to get out of the bad stuff into the good stuff and out of the good stuff into the bad stuff. And it's just a wave. So we just got to be ready to ride it and, control ourselves.
Right, right. Exactly. No, great stuff, John. And I appreciate so much that you joined us and shared your story. And I know that there are people that this will help, and will, get something out of it that they can use for their life. And then, potentially they can help improve someone else's life and just let that ball roll. And so thank you so much for coming on. How do we find you, and how do we find your podcast, and any other way that we can connect with you?
Sure. So my podcast is Life's Checkmark. You can just go to Apple and Spotify. It's on YouTube as well. Just type in Life's Checkmark. It's got a orange check mark, just like the wall in the background here with a guy walking on it. That's the best place to go. So you can start listening. You'll hear Daryl's episode and others, sharing their journey in life. You can also find me at lifescheckmark.com. That's where I have my coaching program for podcasting. You can find more information on the Podcasters Hub, which is a community for podcasters. And, I also do video clips as well for others. They're the best ways. I'll send you my links and stuff, for connecting with me on Facebook and whatnot. And I'm open to engagement. We can set up a 20-minute call just to talk, whether it's about podcasting or life in general. I'm open to it. And yeah, this has been fun, Daryl. I appreciate this. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Yeah, definitely. I've enjoyed it very, very much, and I love to hear those stories. And I'll put all this stuff in the show notes so people can connect with you easily with the links and everything else. So thank you again, and I'm sure we'll be talking quite soon. If you've enjoyed When I Stop Fighting the podcast, please check out my books and my journals on my website, DarylDittmer.com. Enjoy a 15% discount by using the code PODCAST, DARYLDITTMER.com. Thanks again.